Welcome to ResponseABLE Parenting, the podcast that shows you how to parent in alignment to your emotions, needs, and goals versus your programming, bad advice, and let's face it, outdated strategies that just don't work. You'll get in the trenches support on nervous system and emotional regulation, critical mindset shifts, stronger communication strategies, and more. In this podcast, you'll gain transformational tools that take you from reacting to every frustration to responding with clarity, regulation, and finally setting the example you desire for your kids. I'm Becky Jennings, your new parenting coach, and this is the ResponseABLE Parenting podcast. Let's get into it. Hello, and welcome back to another episode. I'm really excited. I get to share this really beautiful interview that I had with husband and wife duo, Jenny Robinson Clark, as well as her husband, Travis Clark, who is the frontman of We the Kings. This is an episode all about losing the people that we love and how we can actually engage in a very gentle conversation with our children about what that looks like afterwards. Jenny's mother passed away, and in that experience, she felt really called to write this story. It's a beautiful children's book called Are You Here? It actually comes out tomorrow, March 17th. And the reason I felt so drawn to this is because not only, and many of you know this, but my son passed away in 2019. And that loss was so profound that having the ability to create a different language with him through signs, through different ways of connecting with him in this world for me was life. Like to never be able to talk to my son or getting a little bit emotional. Anyways, never being able, just thinking that he was forever gone didn't feel like an option for me. And knowing that I could communicate with him still through different signs felt really, really beautiful and necessary and hopeful and real. It's wild. Then that was just recently confirmed with my dad's passing this last July. That was a life-changing experience for me on so many levels. And knowing that I can still talk to him, but in a different way, is everything. So you will hear in this episode a lot about death, but a lot about the way in which we know the people that we care about and love are still alive and still present and still with us in these really beautiful moments that we want to share with them here on this earth, but we can't. And so this book is a beautiful way to talk to your kids about how the conversation can still keep going with the people that they care about and that are no longer here. It's a really beautiful book. I invite you to get a copy yourself. And if you have gone through loss, this is a beautiful invitation to start a different way of communicating with that person that you love. If you are not religious, don't believe in this, have your 0 on the woo scale, or if you are very religious, or if you do feel like this is exactly home, the episode is for you for where you're at. If it is not for you to listen to an episode about death, that is okay. Please go ahead and skip this episode. But if you are longing for a way to still feel that connection, and maybe through our stories that we reminisce on, you feel your loved ones, I welcome you. I invite you into that feeling, and just know that you are so not alone in this challenging landscape post losing people that you love. So without further ado, welcome to the episode. We had to hit record because we were just talking for the last 10 minutes anyways. We decided to bring you guys into the conversation. So I just wanted to welcome Jenny and Travis Clark to the podcast, and we are talking about their brand new book that comes out in March. It's called Are You Here? And it's a story about the magical signs that are all around us from our family members who have passed on. And so first of all, welcome Jenny and Travis. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you so much.
When I got the email about being on the podcast, like, first of all, I was in tears because my dad has just recently passed away. See, I told you I was going to cry. And, I also had the experience with my son passing away in 2019. So I immediately was like, oh yeah, like grief, experiencing loss, talking with your kids. It's such an it's such a tricky topic because we don't want to hide the reality. And
Mm.
how do you explain to a kid that this person who you love so much is no longer here? And so I love how you illustrate the possibility of starting a different way to communicate. And I just love the comfort that it brings of like, yes, they're not physically here, but they're still everywhere. And so if you want to share a little bit about why you wrote the book and maybe how it impacted your kids as well, I would love to hear that.
Yes, thank you. Um, this book has so much meaning to me in so many different ways, but as a child, I was so scared of death. Like, I remember specific moments sitting in my room, or even I have this one memory, I don't know why, but I'm sitting in my parents' car, and I'm in the back seat, and it's dark outside, and I'm looking out the window, and I remember just crying because I was like, is there nothing after we're gone? I had these really dark, thoughts, which I think I'm not alone in that,
Mhm,
and so that stuck with me for a really long time, the fear of death, and for me, it's, I think, the fear of the unknown,
mhm.
um, and so when my grandma was the first one to pass away that was really close to me in my 20s, I was like, "Okay, I can take this opportunity to hide from it again." Like, I my parents were doing the best that they could with the knowledge that they had, and I think they were trying to protect me
Mhm.
when, around death and dying, and so, we never went to funerals, we never spoke about it, so I was just stuck alone in my head and in my
Mm.
thoughts. That's probably the worst place to be,
Mm.
right? Because we conjure up the worst case scenarios, and so when my grandma passed, I was living in California, and I was like, "Okay, I'm gonna make this funeral, I'm gonna go, I'm gonna be there," and so I kind of faced it, right? I faced death, and, it made me kind of soften a little bit and realize, like, yes, it's this scary thing, but, I also really felt her, like, my grandma passed away, and then my aunt passed away, and then my mom's best friend passed away, and then my mom passed, but at everyone's, celebration of life or funeral, there was this gust of wind that would come, like, out of nowhere, and I'm like, I felt it so hard, and I would get chills all over my body for my grandma, and my aunt, and my mom specifically, and then my grandfather
Yeah,
passed
yeah.
away as well last year in January, um, and this gust of wind would just come, and I'm like, "That can't be just nothing," you know?
It's not a
Like like
coincidence.
like
Not a
a
coincidence.
gust, like,
Like, there was none after it or before it, and so, I don't know, I feel like that really helped me, to kind of face death a little bit more, and so when I knew my mom was sick, she was battling cancer for 10 years, it metastasized, we were living in California, we decided to move back to Florida when I was pregnant with my first, we have 4 kids, and it was really challenging, right? Because I moved to California with all these dreams in my heart of what I wanted to do and be, and then I had to make this hard decision, and it was like the best decision that I ever made. I have no regrets for making that, and it's led me to where I am now. Um, but yeah, it was really hard to see my mom declining in her
Mhm.
health, and my grief really was around, before she passed, like, I was angry, I was I had a young child, and then I was pregnant with my second, and so my grief and my the anger in the grief, there's so many emotions with grief, but, like,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, my anger and stuff was, before she passed because I was like, "This just is not fair," and, but after she passed, I don't know for you, but, like, um I had this weight lifted off my shoulders, and I could see colors that I'd never seen before, and I don't know if it was because, like, I knew that she was finally free of her physical body that was so, she was so encapsulated in this body that
unlimited.
limited. Yeah,
Mm.
exactly. So, I felt more present than I had ever felt, and the second time I felt that feeling was right before I wrote the book, Are You Here? But going through that with my mom, made me realize that I needed to be okay to be okay with death and the unknown. And so this book came really out of not nowhere or out of it just came from a place of my grieving, but also a place of such connection to God. I wrote it early one morning at 3 a.m. and I know it was my mom telling me these things. I know it was her telling me that she was with me in everything and everywhere. And these words just started flowing to me. And
And she wasn't you should add that she wasn't, like, up all night, like, with the babies or anything like that. Like, she goes to bed 9, 10, 11 o'clock, and just woke up out of that, like, REM sleep and started
Right.
just, like, delivering.
that happened and I showed my husband in the morning and he turned it into this beautiful song and I was just weeping for days like this
Mhm.
like I didn't know I needed that healing, right? Like grief is not linear and it can't
No.
come so many different ways and forms and when you least expect it. But, it healed me in so many ways, the process of just the song, and we had that song for a year, and always in the back of my head, I was like, "What can we do with this song?" Like, it healed me. I would be doing a disservice to humanity if I didn't at least try and get it out to see if maybe it could help somebody else in their healing journey,
Yeah.
and so I thought, "Oh, maybe I could write a children's book." One morning, I was like, "Oh," and so I got up and I voice memoed it, read it, and I was like, "Oh, this sounds good," and showed my kids, and they really loved it, and so we wrote this book
And it was also so close to, like, almost identical to the original message that, she woke up that one morning and just felt so connected to God and so connected to her mom. It was, even when I took the song, like, I almost felt like it would have been irreverent to change anything.
Yeah.
This beautiful, like divinely guided words. To change anything would have been almost like, uh, just irreverent. And so when
I'm not a songwriter either, right? So I
Yeah.
mom was, like, guiding me in some way because he just turned it into I mean,
yeah,
no.
I feel like, and I feel a similar way when I was creating the song. I kind of heard what it was, and I didn't really, and like, quote unquote, I didn't feel like I had to work. Like, I
Yeah.
just
Yeah. Just flowed out of you.
here, and it was so inspiring to read just at face value without any illustrations or without just on a note sheet, just to see. It's like so powerful. And when I just started playing, I was like, "Oh, there it is." And then it, like, came down a couple hours later and to show Jenny, thinking like, "Wow, she's gonna love this. Like, this is," and just she cried for days. And I
Yeah.
was
You're
but
like,
that was
"Okay, I'm sorry, and you're welcome," at the
the
exact same
I was
time.
like, I knew it was good. Yeah, I knew it was a good thing. I've showed her songs before where she gets teary-eyed, but this was, like, full on,
Yeah.
and
Stop.
Yeah.
and then it didn't stop, and, like, a couple days later, I'm like, "What did I do?"
Yeah, what
Like,
did I broke her.
but
It's so healing, and I hope, like, when you listen to it too, right, it brings up emotion, but my, hope for the book and for the song is that you find hope in it and not heartbreak, right? Like
Yeah, and I think that's the most beautiful part about Signs, right? I read the book Signs
yeah,
when my son
before I went back
yeah, when my son passed away, and then I reread it when my dad passed away, just because you forget, like, the accessibility of Signs, and I think, like, I am deep down the woo rabbit hole, like, I'm a woo subscriber, check that on the box, um but at the same time, the speed and the breakneck pace that motherhood is, that parenting is, it's just sometimes you are moving too fast to catch them, and it quite literally takes the gusts of wind, and like I was describing to you earlier before I hit record, the lemons rolling down the hill, like, next to me when I'm asking or, like, on a walk and I'm just kinda scattered and, like, wondering if I'm on the right track of what I'm doing or something, and the way that my son, Jackson communicates with me is through lemons, and literally, I will be walking and there will just be a lemon, and I will actively seek a lemon tree and be like, "There has to be a lemon tree around here somewhere, like, there has to be a place where it came from," and there will be none.
and our analytical brains wanna, like, be like,
Yes, I wanna find the logic, I wanna find but there's been so many of those that you begin to not you begin to believe that it is so real, right? There's more evidence that it's real than there is evidence that it's not. I think I'm trying to say, like, the year after he passed away, I was on the beach and I was like, if you just like, if you are actually here, can, I don't know, send me a ring, right? A ring. How specific is that, you know? And my son, he must have been like 4 or 5 at the time. He comes running over and he's like, Mom, look what I found. And it was like a ring on the
The
beach.
Yes.
I'm like, that
Uh,
never happens. That never happens. And so it's things like that that are always just so magical. And when you were talking about how, the weight off your shoulders after your mom's passing and just she's free from that body that was really just like, I mean, just a physical body. It wasn't even her anymore. That's exactly where I was with my dad. My dad had been struggling with Alzheimer's and dementia for easily 10 years at that point. And he was in his prime, 6'4", like a big guy who like just commanded the room. And by the time he passed, he was shorter than me. He was completely folded in half. And I think he was like 150 pounds. And it was just, so hard to see that ravage them in that way. And when he did pass, it was a huge exhale. And I remember going to I was one of the speakers for the funeral, which again, very, very hard to do.
yeah.
And the night before, I had this dream and he was there in his full 6'4" body, in his full, like, almost like when he was like in his 40s and 50s, like when I remember him as a kid.
Oh, yeah.
Like really in his prime, like no gray hairs, just like, just happy as can be. And in my dream, still trying to access logic, I was like, Dad, you've been dead for like 4 weeks. How are you here? And he's like, well, I want to hear what you have to say. I'm like, but you literally have had no oxygen. Like in my dream, I'm like talking him out of
Trying to communicate with you or whatever. Yeah.
yeah, and he just kept telling me, like, "I just wanna hear what you have to say, like, I wanna hear what people have to say." And I shared this the next morning over breakfast with the family, and my uncle, who was also a speaker, he goes, "You didn't have that dream." I said, "I did." And he goes, "I had that dream."
Come
And I
on.
was like, "No, no." He was like, "Yes." He was standing there across the street, and I was like, "David, why are you here? Like, we're getting ready for your funeral." And he had said the same thing to my uncle, like, "I just wanna hear what you guys have to say." And those are the things that you're like, they're here. They are
It's all consciousness, right? It's all energy. It's all energy, and it's like
yeah,
it's emergent consciousness of like you said your uncle had the
yeah,
thing, yeah, and then it's like it's so intertwined, and there's a thread of connection through everyone and everything. I
yeah.
truly
I mean,
believe that.
and think about like likely if you're anything like us, you were probably having those dreams between like the 1 and 4 o'clock in the
Probably.
morning, so like it's funny how connected you can be even, subconscious, like dreams. I think dreams are beautiful.
Yeah.
I think I think when you and maybe it has something to do with you being in REM sleep and you turn off your mind and that part of your mind that's always running, it's calculating and once that turns off, you're like,
You can access.
yeah, your soul is like, all right, I got the wheel from here,
Yeah.
and you
Now it's
really
time to actually show them what they're supposed to be doing.
yeah, and I think what our brains do, and I should preface by saying I'm not a professional at this at all whatsoever.
Neuroscientist.
Yeah, but I think what our brains do is what your version is you try to find the lemon tree. You try to, make the pragmatic, logical reason of why something is there. So even with something like that, as fantastical as that is, we almost default to, okay, well, maybe I was thinking about him and what I would say, and that's why he said,
Of
like
course. Yeah.
instead of just like the gratitude of like,
Thank you.
"Dad, thank you. Thank
Mhm.
you for," and it's hard I think it is. It's hard for people to get to that. It's hard for
Mhm.
people to accept that there's magic, you
It's
know?
also a choice though, right? So we can
Yeah.
choose
Yeah.
to
A
But
choice to be
you do
open to it.
yeah.
once you do, and once you and I think that's what a lot of the book is just like getting people to see through a lens and a perspective of like, just imagine if,
Mhm.
what could be, and if you can get yourself to that point,
Mhm.
there's just like, because we are limited, our minds are limited, but if you can get yourself to that point, you can see lemons in a desert,
Yeah.
and not have to look for a tree. You
Yeah.
just know, like,
Yeah.
thank you, Jackson, like that.
Yeah. 100%.
So,
Yeah, and I love that too. And I definitely bring my kids into it. There's too many to say that it's not true. Like after he passed, and this has I think happened like one time since we've lived in this house, and it was that one time. There was like a flock, I don't know if it's called a flock, of monarch butterflies that hatched, and they literally swarmed our entire house and like just traveled right across our house.
wow.
I I was like, "Did anyone else in Los Angeles just experience this?" Like, I was like but it was from our hillside, and it just kind of, like, went up and over our house, and I was just standing in the backyard like, "There's no possible way this is happening," and, like, trying to
No one
catch
else
on
is doing
video, and they're flying all over the place, and, whenever we are out as a family, typically, if we're doing something like a trip. I don't think there's been like a single family bonding trip that on the way there, a rainbow hasn't just like shown up out of no yeah. That it's like and my kids are like, "Oh, he's here. He didn't wanna miss out," and
Out of storm too, right? Like just random rainbows you see.
but
Right.
there'll be nothing. There'll
Yeah.
literally be nothing, and then there's just a rainbow dropped right into the street, and you're like, "What?" And it's just these things that, and my kids at this point, anytime they see a rainbow, they're like, "Hey, bud." Like, they, like, wave, they say hi, they're like, "Oh, he didn't wanna be left out again," and it's just,
um,
it's that's what keeps them here, It keeps them anchored, and one of the big things that I didn't want to have happen is that we forgot that we had a brother.
Mm.
That life just kept moving and like he would have been 7, like he's still a nugget. And just to think like if they don't remember it or they're like, "Oh, I think my mom had a kid." I didn't ever want that. I wanted them to know that he was here and he can still like we often talk, my son really struggles with like ADHD and impulse control and a bunch of other things and I'm always like, you can talk to your team. Like you have a team."
yeah,
And he's like, "What do you mean I have a team?" I'm like, "Well, you have ancestors. You have like actual
Mhm.
people in your life. You have your brother. You can like run ideas by them and they'll give you and he's like, "What?" Like he just starts like I can ask him anything. I'm like, "You can ask them anything."
that's such a good thing to teach them. So that's so profound. And I think that's kind of like what we wish, our parents did the best that they could with the knowledge that they had. But
Right.
it's
As a
those
child.
kind of things that I wish I would have had those tools
Yeah.
to
Well, and
process
like
them.
Jenny, like you're saying, like you looked outside in the dark and you were like, I don't know what's out there. I feel alone. And death specifically is so final. And it's so, confusing, right? And children are so curious about it too, like, "I'll kill you if you do that," or like, "Oh my gosh, what if I died?" And like, we like, "Ah," we get all like freaked out. And I've also had that happen, and so my kids are very much like, We get it, mom. You've already had a kid." I'm like, "Okay, but like seriously, like let's be real here. I don't want to lose another one." Um
Mm.
and so we kind of like they get it. Like we talk about it a lot and I think it's something that can be very very confusing and when you're confused about big things like this, then you just like you were saying, go to your own image of what it is and generally speaking that image isn't rainbows, deer, butterflies, owls. It's like dark ground, ouch, this is bad, right? And you're alone in that thought. And we all know that we can ruminate and we can stay stuck in something and then it that we start to believe that that is the path, right? And so the more we can open up the conversation and I think just asking how they're feeling about it, like asking what they're wondering. I think that was really helpful for my son when his grandpa passed away because he was like, I can't ever talk to him again. I'm like,
Mhm.
"Oh, no, no, you can.
all the time. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just different. Like you'll just hear it differently. Can I be super real with you and tell you a personal story? A few years back, my son, the whole reason why I do the job I do today, was having one of those fiery moments. He was talking back, demanding it be his way. He was refusing to listen to any of our solutions, and the moment was getting really intense. My husband looked at me and said, "Well, you know all the parenting stuff, fix this." I completely froze. All the scripts from the books I'd read, all the strategies from the podcasts I'd listened to completely disappeared from my brain in that moment. But based on the volume of challenges that we were having with our strong-willed ADHD son, I knew I had to figure out a different way, because panicking in the moment and grasping at anything only to not follow through at all and end up yelling just wasn't working. From this experience, I developed a repeatable, easy to remember, and easy to follow system that literally works with every single triggering moment. I can attest to it because there are many in my life. Now I can show up the way I want. I can communicate in a way that actually resonates with my strong-willed child. If this sounds like a solution for what's happening in your home, take these next 2 steps. Number 1, watch the free training about my rewiring process in the show notes. And then number 2, book your free call. On that call, we will talk about what's happening in your home, and you will get a customized solution that works best for you. I assure you, this doesn't have to feel as hard day in and day out as it does. There is the solution, and I'm so excited to talk to you about it.
Yeah, what I love about for you guys is the rainbows, and it's so funny because I understand the physics of rainbow. Like I understand what makes a rainbow, and Jenny all the time just sees these like rainbows, and just like, yeah, but there's nothing there that's supposed to be making
Exactly.
that rainbow, and it's so cool. But for us, our big thing is ladybugs. So we
Oh, yes.
one on the mic, and I wanted to tell the story because when we were talking about the swarm of monarch butterflies, um, the way that we keep Gigi, Mama Bear, very present and still alive in spirit in our house is through ladybugs, and the kids, they, even Callie and Kingston, our 2 youngest who came after she had passed, still have this beautiful relationship with Gigi, and every time they see ladybug, "Hi, Gigi. Oh, can I hold Gigi?" And it's, oh my gosh, it is so beautiful to see, and they're so open, and we're giving them the tools to be open with understanding that, oh, when people pass, they're not gone, they're not lost, they're here with us just in different ways, and kids, for the most more than adults, they're still curious, and they're
Yes.
still innocent, and they're still able to have these concepts without the pragmatic logical thing of coming like, what, but why, how could
Yeah.
so I love that, and I think as parents and guardians, I think that's the way to like foster your kids into understanding. It's why the book is, I, obviously I'm biased, but I think it's going to be so powerful because you're going to be able to have these kids that are like, oh, I get it. I can use this
Mm.
whenever that grief thing hits, because nobody is an exception to the rule.
No.
Everybody's going to experience grief
Yeah.
in one way or another. It's how you can deal with it, and what you have in your toolbox to be able to deal with
To
it.
move through it.
And
Yeah.
there was her dad was up in Minneapolis also receiving cancer treatment,
Mm.
and he was up at Mayo Clinic, and there was this crazy it was a swarm, and there were ladybugs everywhere, and he got to the clinic, and he was sitting there, and he was explaining to this woman like, my wife who passed, she comes and visits me as a ladybug, so this is my doing, and she was like, "Well, you didn't know that there's an infestation of ladybugs,
He's like, "Can it,
that's
lady? This is my vision."
but that's the thing." He's like, "Yeah, exactly."
Yeah.
Like, yeah,
Stop logicking
it
this.
does,
This is a miracle for me.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
2 things can be right,
Yeah.
2 things can be true. Yes, that, but that's her.
Yeah.
That's your answer,
Yeah.
that's her, and
Yeah.
I
There
just love.
might be an infestation, but who caused it?
Yeah.
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 Like,
That's her way of showing me, and
yeah.
and I just think that's a perfect example of the contrast between the two ideals of, of
Not believing in
the
believing.
the belief, the believing in the possibility,
Yeah.
and and not even the non-believing, but just the still learning.
Yeah.
Like I don't think that anybody's stuck from being able to believe. I think
Yeah.
that they're still just on their road and on their journey to getting to a point where you can be open to it.
But this goes back, I think this is like very like it's very parallel to how we retrain ourselves to parent, right? How we are stuck in reactivity, how we're stuck in the same way of responding to the same triggers, to the same frustrations all the time. And it's because we're thinking about the issue. We're ruminating on the problem. We're in our brain versus in our bodies, right? It's when we slow down and we actually tap into the sensations in our body. It's when we slow down and we pause and be like, what are these feelings actually telling me? Why am I so reactive to this moment? It's only when we're in our bodies that the solution presents itself. And so when we're constantly trying to prove the sign as like, no, that sign is, that's just that there's no way that's possible. And we logic, we close ourselves off to the magic that's coming in to the heart. Yeah. And so when we feel it and we allow it, it does actually open up space for incredible things like more creativity than we've had, or, you know, just more openness, more love, more connectivity, more ability to put words to what we're feeling. And I didn't know how to live with grief. And in 2019, like pretty much all of 2019, all of 2020, there was a lot going on in 2020 as well. And I actually got pregnant 5 months later, had my son almost a year to the day of when my other son passed. So there was quite a lot in that chunk of time. But through the whole process, my main focus was how do I parent alongside of grief without like stuffing it away, without like hiding from it, without allowing it to be here? Because what came out of that was this entire company. Like what came out of that was my entire job that I do today, because I was open to hearing like what the next steps were supposed to be.
I mean, I can't even imagine how much juggling emotionally, spiritually, physically that would take
Yeah.
to to be in the position that you were in. And I think that that makes you the perfect person to have started something like this.
Yeah. Oh,
Um,
I mean, I was like crying, sending the email back, being like, this is, it started from the very beginning. Like with him, the signs were so palpable. Like I have hundreds of stories with Jackson that are like, people are like, that's not true. That's just not true. Like, I mean, we're getting really personal here, but the night before he passed away, I literally was in the shower and I said, "Will Charlie forgive me when he passes away?" And I was like, "Whoa, who said that? Like, what just happened? What am I talking about?" And I was in labor at home, but my contractions were too far all over the place that they told me to keep laboring at home. He did pass away at 3 a.m. I felt it. I knew the whole thing was, but I didn't understand it. So, long story short, we ended up in the hospital several hours later, and the minute they told me that there was no blood flow to the brain or the heart anymore, the clock on the triage wall started spinning like wildly, just spinning, 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 spinning. And I said, "Oh, well, that's not logical. So of course this isn't happening. And so I must be dream like in my head, I was like, this has to be like the most realistic dream I've ever been in." And I looked over at my husband. I was like, "Do you see the clock on the wall?" And he was like, "Yeah." And the nurse was like, "I've never seen the clock do that." And I was like, "Oh no, they can both see it too." And then I was like, "Oh no, it's really happening." But the second we all saw it, it stopped on the exact time. And we were like, what just happened? Like, he literally left the room through, and it was such an interesting moment. And, lots transpired after that. Many other things happened that were just super unrealistic, if to say it lightly.
Did
But
you make correlation? Sorry to interrupt you. Did you make that correlation while it was happening, or like did you have to process it a little bit and be like, okay, like, or did you believe already that that was something that could be?
oh, yeah, like, in the moment, I think it was so odd, like, we're sitting in, like I have, like, these things all like, the electrodes and the things, like, there's so much medical stuff happening all around me, and there's so many machines and buttons and beeping and all this stuff, and then I'm just kind of in a numb state knowing what I just learned, and I'm just staring at this clock, and I kind of come to seeing it spinning, and I'm like, wait, like, none of this makes any sense. None of this makes sense." And so then once it was confirmed from multiple people that they were also seeing it, I was like, "How?"
And you're like, it does make sense, right? Like it
Yeah.
does make sense. His soul was telling you, like,
Yeah. Yeah. And, I've had there's been, like, a lot of other things that have happened in there, but I truly believe at this point, with all the confirmation that I have gotten, that he was and I was a very visual person, like, I meditated on my son's, my first son's birth to the point where I couldn't tell you where my visualization practice was and his birth was, like, they were identical, so, like, I got really, really good at that, and, I could never visualize him, like, I could never visualize Jackson. It was always just black. I could never see it, and I would always just, like, I'd be desperately, like, trying to play out a scene with my kids playing, and I just couldn't get there. And so every single week, like, every week I would take a bump picture, and I'd be like, "I can't believe he's still here. Can't believe he's still here." Like, I just and the
oh,
whole ti the whole time the whole time I just couldn't believe he was still here. Like, it felt nothing about it felt real, and I think he was truly meant to be with me for that time because I was on a certain path in my life, and whether or not it was fine, but it wasn't my path, right? It wasn't the road that I was supposed to be on, and so with the rock bottom, it literally, ricocheted me to a completely different path, and I don't think there would have been anything else that would have
on that.
done that.
There's been
Yeah.
so much beauty through grief. And I feel like if people can see that and know that and feel that, then it will help them with their grieving journey,
Yeah.
right? Like to find, yeah, I love that you were able to notice that. And I believe that souls kind of see their life before they enter our body. So like I'm sure Jackson knew like that's what's his purpose, right? Like
Yeah.
he knew that he was choosing you.
Mm.
Yeah,
to
he had
be-
a contract for about 9 months,
Yeah, you know what I
and
mean? I
yeah,
know.
yeah. I mean, it's I think also the beautiful part is, like, you can still love them so much, and that never goes away. And, like, you can feel it back. And I think that this is a beautiful way to help kids really understand, like, e even though they're not physically there, they can still envelop you in love. They can still guide you. They can still just support you, and I don't know. I'm a firm believer that they're
Me
still
too, girl.
You guys are
they're very much around and very much present. Yeah.
you guys are so crazy similar.
Are you Joe Dispenza? Are
Oh,
you familiar with Joe
so
Dispenza?
s so Joe Dispenza, so when I yeah, after the stillbirth, I refused to, like, tap into emotion. I was like, "I'm going to science my way through this, like, that's what I'm gonna do." And so I read books on stillbirths, and I, like, fully immersed myself, maybe a little too much, but I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna heal myself through science, right? That's what I'm gonna do. I'm not gonna, like, go to therapy, or I'm not gonna" and don't worry, I ended up in a lot of therapy. But, Joe Dispenza's book, I read it, like, God knows how many times. And truly, it was like, "Oh, this is how I heal. Like, this is the path forward to healing." And it was very accurate. I mean,
Mm.
it's a wild process when you really do it. It's
I
crazy.
I went to his retreat when I was 9 months pregnant with my fourth, a week-long retreat in Florida,
Wow.
and it was life-changing, like doing all these walking meditations and whatnot, but that really catapulted me into his work, and so in 2023, it was when I went to another workshop in Marco Island, and I was gifted the book Maybe by Kobe Yamada. I don't know if you've heard this story, but, this book is
No.
beautiful, but I
It's an owl as well.
well, sorry. So the first woman I met on the beach at this workshop, we start talking and she gifts me this book and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, thank you. I have 4 kids at home. I'll bring it home and read it to them. They're gonna be so excited because they always want something when we travel." So
She also had like a handful of books that weren't this. It wasn't the same
yeah, she had like
books that like
6 different books. She's like, "I love reading children's book. They inspire me. They're so magical." And I'm like, "Oh, thank you." Like,
she chose that one,
yeah,
that
this
very
one she
specific
gave
one.
me. So I put it in my suitcase. I don't know if you know this story, but um uh I go through the retreat. I had 2 intentions to connect to my mom and heal my IBS. I did both. I healed my IBS and I connected to my mom like I had never connected before. And that was when I was listening to Signs by Laura Lynn Jackson on the way back up from the retreat. And I'm like, okay, mom, owl, a barred owl. She used to go to workshops and she would teach us how to call for owls. And now going back to her house, our house growing up, she has owls everywhere. I didn't
Ever.
notice them before.
Yeah.
But anyways, and so I get home, I try to read this book to the kids, and they're getting distracted. So I end up just reading it to myself. And then I just went to the page with this beautiful barred owl on it. And I'm like, "Oh, this book was meant for me. It's not meant for my kids." And I just start bawling my eyes.
Yes,
And
of course.
I run outside and I'm like, oh my god, I'm just, like, talking to my mom, like, "Mom, thank you, you
Yeah.
it's like a story about the potential endless potential in all of us. I'm like, "You're telling me that God has something bigger in my heart, like, something bigger in my heart to share with the world. I know that you're telling me to just reach my full potential." Anyway, so then a couple days later was when the message came of "Are you here?" And
Oh, I love that.
I really say that the inspiration behind "Are You Here?" is Joe Dispenza,
Yeah.
Laura Lynn Jackson, and Kobe Yamada from
Yeah.
Maybe.
Honestly, Joe Dispenza's what his work was like the catalyst to healing. It was like, "Okay, I can do this." Like, it gave me yes, it, like, allowed me to logically understand how to meditate to heal my body.
It's
Science and the
funny.
spirituality, a lot of people need that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was like the proof. I think a lot of people need proof that it will work, and Joe's book was really like it was proof, scientifically proven, case study after case study after case study. Okay, like, it's literally written down right here, like,
Which one did you read?
Becoming Supernatural was my first introduction to Joe Dispenza, yes.
I also think that people, and I think globally, they split that line and they say, I am either scientific
Or
or
spirit?
I am faith or spiritual,
Mhm.
And uh, what's beautiful is that they shouldn't like they should be in alignment,
They should be
and
clear.
I think that's what he does so well, and
Yeah.
is able to explain such complex ideologies and ways and functions to people like me, for example, who don't know anything about that. And it's like it's really it's so impressive. But I love so much because I've never really felt like science and spirituality should be two different things. I feel like they should be in harmony with each other, and there are plenty of it when you go down the right path, you realize that like, oh, my journey into faith and my journey into science, it's one and the same.
Mhm.
And
Well, I listened have you listened to the telepathy tapes? Have you listened to
I was
oh
gonna
my
ask
gosh,
you. I was I know. I wanna
Oh my gosh.
volunteer with autistic children. I
Well, this 2nd season, they actually had a whole episode on near-death experiences, and the one scientist who was, like, absolutely didn't believe in it, he had a near-death experience, and he was dead, and he came back, and he was like, they're exactly the same. Science and it's like he combined that path real fast because he was like then he interviewed all these other people who had near death experiences and they were all exactly like his experience and he was like, "This is ridiculous." You
isn't
know?
that amazing to have somebody with a mind like that
who is critical and does not believe any of it. Yeah.
Exactly, and it was like, "Oh, that's all nonsense, nonsense, nonsense. Here's what's actually happening at a scientific
Yeah.
level. This is they are doing this and they're learning, and then for him to go through it, like it makes for the perfect person to go through something like that
Yeah.
because you're just like, yes,
Yeah.
and for the rest of us, you're like, oh, that's kind of awesome because maybe these people were all a little hoop de doop, like whatever. You're like, maybe it wasn't, and then when something like that, it's like it is kind of like,
Confirms it.
yeah, it's like a reconfirmation of like,
I'm not
okay, I'm not
crazy.
crazy. This is real. This is really
Yeah.
happening.
Yeah.
Uh, I wanted to touch on our kids too because like we very much like listen to these things and we talk about these things with our kids and like we were watching one of the I think it was on YouTube, but it was like it was part of the telepathy tapes, and we were showing the kids like these autistic children who could our kids like magic, and so we'll do things around the house and like I'll teach them these like little magic tricks, not that I know many, but and they try to do it back to me and they just
Oh,
love
it's
it.
the best.
And some of these kids within the telepathy tapes, um, what they're doing to kids who still have that sense of wonder and curiosity, it's magical. It's really
Yeah, but are
magical.
teaching kids that they have the potential to do that too. Like I know the
Yes.
autistic community is very connected, but we all have that possibility to be that connected
Yeah.
as well. And so if we can teach our kids at a younger age that they have that in them,
So I just like the idea of as we are learning and as we are elevating our consciousness and frequencies and our level of understanding, like why not at the same time, like let them learn with us. And then not only do you grow closer as a family, but
have
you are
deep
more
conversation.
aligned and you have deep conversations. And what I've noticed is that the kids ask like the best questions sometimes.
Yeah.
Where he's like, "Yeah, that's good. I don't know. I don't really know if I can give you an answer, but like let's figure that out. Let's figure that out
Yeah,
together."
that reminds me, I was driving, this is before I think I was even pregnant with Jackson, so obviously before Trey, and I was driving, he must have been 3, and he was in the back seat, and he's like, when do we get there?" And I was like, "Oh, well, we have, like, this stop and then this stop," and he's like, "No, when do we get there? Because we're just going from thing to thing and then, like, when do we get there?" And I'm like, "Okay, that's that's a bigger one. You're 4, hopefully when you're 90." Like,
Right, I know. My 4-year-old too is so intrigued by it.
so
Like,
curious. And so that's why these things this why that's why, and it's a great spot to segue back and, finish the conversation of this book because they are so curious and to not leave them alone in their thoughts, to not
Mm.
have them wonder and, because I know that with if they're stuck in a fight or if we're constantly yelling at them, the conclusion for them is going to be, it's me, I'm the bad kid, this is why, I'm at fault. But when we're able to talk to them about it, own our stuff, that's when they can actually separate themselves from the story, right? But the same thing is true with death and grief and not understanding that. It's we need to be able to offer the space for them to explore the questions without feeling like they're doing something wrong. Or, some of their questions are things that we also have on our heart that we also want to explore with them. But we just don't necessarily have the purest words and like, the naive way of thinking about it. And they can ask some of the most beautiful questions. And, like you get the chance to revive that relationship and revive that person and kind of celebrate exactly what you get to keep them around for all the best parts and keep them around for all the fun memories and I don't know,
We
I think this is a really beautiful way to share that with your kids.
Yeah, we love going through like old videos and photos, and our kids just love
Thing, yeah.
seeing and being able to have something like this where you have like, okay, now we have a book, and this little girl is actually from a picture of Jenny when she was about 6 or 7 years old, maybe
my
8,
mom.
with her mom, and
Mhm.
it's just like finding new ways to incorporate intentionally uh, our loved ones who have gone before us into the conversation and into our actions, and as if they're a daily part, as if they're always there, is such a game changing thing for kids, and also for us, for the adults and anyone around us. Really, like, it's keeping them alive, and
Yeah.
it's so helpful in the grieving process, because on days when, again, like Jenny said, like grief not being linear, like on days when it is like a little more challenging, like y- you have these things in place that can really like help you through that day or that
Yeah.
season.
I heard something about when grief hits, it's like actually our loved ones trying to communicate with us rather than like looking at it as like, oh, I'm so sad and lonely that they're not here anymore. But like actually they're trying to communicate with you when you're feeling like that. So maybe, talk to them in those moments and
Yeah.
play a song that they used to love or whatever it is.
Oh, I love that. I love that visual. I love that. Oh, thank you both so much for being here. The book is called Are You Here? I'll share it. I'll show the visual right here. All the information on where you can get it will be in the show notes, and how you can check out Jenny's Instagram, how you guys can connect. But this just is a really beautiful way to show your kids that the people that they loved are still around, and you have just a new way of talking to them. And I think that's really special. And they can be as creative as they want to in how they talk to them.
Yeah,
Love that.
absolutely.
Well,
Thanks.
thank you so much for being here. And everyone, I will see you next week. Thank you for listening to the ResponseABLE Parenting Podcast. If you like what you heard, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe. If you know someone who would benefit from this podcast, I'd be honored if you'd share this episode with them. Until next time, know that you are enough, you are capable, you've made it through all of your hardest days, and we will keep growing on this parenting journey together. This podcast was produced by Kim Kelty and myself, Becky Jennings, and edited by the Kelty Method, Branding and Podcasting.